The story of the Sundarbans begins not with people, but with water. For millennia, the mighty arteries of the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers have coursed down from the Himalayas, carrying colossal loads of silt and sediment. Where these rivers finally meet the Bay of Bengal, they didn't surrender to the sea, they began building. They crafted the world's largest river delta, a muddy, ever-shifting frontier of land and tide. This creation myth produced a landscape utterly unique, a sprawling, intricate labyrinth where saltwater tides surge dozens of miles inland twice a day. It is here, in this brackish environment, that the mangrove forest took root. These are not ordinary trees. They are pioneers with roots that breathe oxygen directly from the air, forming an impenetrable, silent, green wall. The name itself, Sundarban, likely derives from the dominant mangrove species, the Sundari tree, meaning beautiful forest. The footprints of the ancients. For much of its early history, the Sundarbans was an enigma, a fortress of mud and roots too harsh and unforgiving for large-scale settlement. However, scattered archaeological evidence shows that early civilizations, perhaps as far back as the 2nd century CE, attempted to carve out a living on the slightly higher ridges. They were driven by the delta's fertile soil, but constantly battled the powerful tides and the relentless forest. This struggle birthed powerful local deities. Bandibi, the forest goddess, revered equally by Hindus and Muslims, who protects villagers who venture into the jungle, and her fierce antagonist, Dakshin Rai, the deified tiger god. This pantheon reflects the reality of life here. Survival is a spiritual negotiation with the wilderness, a constant plea for safe passage. Pirates and Mughal subtlety. The true era of conflict began around the 15th and 16th centuries. The Sundarbans' intricate network of channels proved to be an ideal refuge, not for kings, but for Mogh and Portuguese pirates. They raided coastal settlements, using the impenetrable maze of the delta to hide their ships and evade pursuit from the powerful Mughal fleets. When the Mughal Empire finally asserted control over Bengal, they saw the forest less as a sanctuary for outlaws and more as an inexhaustible resource. They began the process of officially granting jagir, land, rights, to clear the forest for cultivation. Salt was extracted, timber was harvested, and the edge of the wilderness was slowly, painfully pushed back. Yet the deep interior remained unconquered, a wild heart beating to the rhythm of the tides. The Great Mapping and Reservation. By the late 18th century, with the arrival of the British colonial powers, the approach shifted from chaotic exploitation to systematic management. It was during this period that the first full cartographic survey of the Sundarbans was initiated in 1764, giving external powers their first true grasp of the delta's sprawling complexity. The British recognized the commercial value of the timber, particularly the resilient Sundari wood. To manage this resource sustainably, the colonial government declared the region a reserve forest in 1878. This was a critical turning point. It didn't stop exploitation, but it introduced the concept of conservation and regulated harvesting, officially separating the wild, protected mangrove areas from the lands designated for agriculture. The modern sanctuary and the rising tide. The 20th century saw the Sundarbans gain its modern identity. The political partitioning of India in 1947 split the delta in two, creating the Indian Sundarbans and the Bangladeshi Sundarbans. In both nations, the focus turned intensely to conservation. The area was eventually recognized globally for its ecological importance, culminating in its declaration as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1987. Today, the Sundarbans is internationally famous as the last great stronghold of the magnificent Royal Bengal tiger. It is the only place on Earth where tigers routinely swim in saltwater and survive solely on forest resources. Yet this ancient, resilient ecosystem now faces its gravest threat: climate change. As sea levels rise, the fragile, low-lying mudflats are disappearing. Increasingly violent cyclones tear through the canopy. The story of the Sundarbans is no longer just a history. It is a live-action drama of survival, where the breathing roots of the mangrove forest and the desperate roar of the tiger stand as symbols of nature's monumental fight against the rising tide.